Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. Ready to go with another show. Thankfully, we're going to have some help today. Two days in a row, solo shows. Not an easy thing to do, so I'm thankful, as always, even when I don't have just solo shows, to have Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter on tap today. We got to get our feet back underneath us. We're in day 57, somehow, of Covington Catholic story, and it continues to get worse. Not joking when I tell you that the White House has invited the boys for a visit with the president, because, of course, why not? Why wouldn't you have that happen? Absolutely consistent with everything else that has ever happened with this crazy White House. And I'm not certain when the visit is slated for, but some of the mystery of their interest in the situation is cleared up. I mean, I think this probably would have happened, and probably the visit to the White House would have happened even without this connection, because I'm sure this is the sort of thing that Stephen Miller ran into the Oval Office with and said, we ought to invite these kids to the White House to own the libs. And, of course, that being the most important thing that you could possibly do in the Trump administration. I'm sure the idea was approved right away. But if that hadn't done the trick, it was discovered this morning and came to me by way of Kate Sherrill, who sent on another sharp-eyed person's tweet about a story in the Cincinnati papers. Remember, of course, the Covington Catholic is in the Cincinnati suburbs in northern Kentucky. And the story title, Who Knew? Did you know? Who knew Trump's top White House attorney is Covington Catholic High School graduate? Jason Williams, who is the author of the piece and not the White House counsel, reports the following. The nationwide firestorm surrounding Covington Catholic has brought to light that one of the greater Cincinnati high school's most prominent graduates happens to be President Trump's top White House attorney. We called the name the other day and said, geez, I hadn't even realized that this guy had been installed in the job. And we weren't sure how to pronounce his name either. Pat Cipollone or Cipollone, I suppose. In the New York area, I guess we might have said Cipollone, but maybe down in Kentucky they go with Cipollone. But at any rate, he's a Cov Cath, as they call it, class of 1984 graduate, which puts him, a year behind Brett Kavanaugh, I think, in his graduation from whatever the hell it was up here in the Washington, D.C. area. Had quite the run with elite Catholic schoolboys from the 80s of late. Anyway, Pat recently took over as White House General Counsel. He had previously served as an informal advisor to the president on the special counsel investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. So what a pedigree, right? What does Cipollone's White House role have to do with last week's incident in Washington, D.C. involving current CovCath students? Absolutely nothing, they claim. But it wasn't widely known. I assume this sentence must have changed in editing. It probably hadn't been widely known because it now says, but it wasn't been widely known. That's not right. That Trump had a top advisor directly connected to CovCath, or to Greater Cincinnati for that matter. Several attempts to interview Cipollone on Tuesday were unsuccessful. His mouth was full. He couldn't answer. That's an interesting way of putting it. He didn't answer requests for an interview or declined an interview. A woman at Cipollone's suburban Washington, D.C. home, don't bother him at home, told the Inquirer he was not available for comment because he was probably at work. Anyway, maybe they did it over the weekend. Oh, no. It was the attempts on Tuesday were unsuccessful. Who knows when they called his home. Anyway, Trump took to Twitter on Monday night and again on Tuesday morning to defend the CovCath students embroiled in the controversy. You know the rest of this story. Let's skip down to where we find out maybe a little bit more about Cipollone. He's 52 years old. He's spent most of his 30-year career in Washington and Chicago. Not much is publicly known about him back home in greater Cincinnati. In extensive Google and Inquirer archive searches, in fact, one of the few news items that showed Cipollone's connection to the region was a blurb about his hiring in the Trump administration, buried on page 26 in last month's Covington Catholic Journal School magazine. Here are some other things to know about Cipollone. He's a committed Catholic advocate. In 2004, he was one of the founding members of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. Is that different from the regular National Prayer Breakfast? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they just serve side dishes. I have no idea what they do. Conservative former presidential candidate Rick Santorum, who they list here as Rick Santorium, which is kind of humorous in a way, also helped start the annual prayer meeting, which draws more than 1,500 people to Washington. Cipollone is well-liked and respected by Trump's personal attorneys, I guess. Who cares about that? Because those guys are crazy. The Washington Post reported in October, when he was hired, in the same article, Trump was quoted as saying, "Pat's a great guy. He's very talented." I don't know who he is. Well, later on when he commits a crime. I never heard of him. He's a coffee boy. Fox News' Laura Ingraham has called him her godfather and spiritual mentor. Did you know that? Because he helped the conservative commentator convert to Catholicism in 2002, according to the Post. Oh, I wonder if he did so with the help of that now disgraced priest that we read about a couple of weeks ago. Maybe I'll investigate that while we're talking to Greg later on. I bet that turns up a hit. Anyway, after leaving Covcath, Cipollone received his bachelor's degree from New York City's Fordham University. New York City? We're all supposed to say that. He went to law school at the University of Chicago. Oh boy, law and economics. Excellent. Cipollone worked in the Justice Department during George W. Bush's presidency. He was then a partner in the Washington-based law firm Stein, Mitchell, Cipollone, Beato, I don't know how they say it, Beato, and Missner, LLP, by the way. The firm has since dropped his name from the firm name. W. Neil Eggleston, the former White House general counsel under President Obama, told the Post that ex-law partner Cipollone is, quote, used to the high-profile litigation with all eyes on you. Well, so far he hasn't had any eyes on him at all, but la-di-da. There you go. So interesting connection. Doesn't mean anything in particular, except that I'm sure it helped in securing them a White House invitation. But again, I would imagine this is the sort of thing that Stephen Miller would have been on pretty quickly with or without having a Covcath grad there in the White House. But it's an interesting side note, to be sure. And it's the sort of thing I thought that in prior administrations, if the White House counsel saw in the news that his former high school, I say alma mater because people, I think, misuse the Latin term. I guess it's not alma mater, right? It's his mater, but not mine. But anyway, that's the way people say it. But if his high school were involved in such a public spectacle, the White House counsel would be mortified by this and, maybe be answering questions around the hallways of the White House. Like, didn't you go to that school? Yeah, I did. Were they that crazy when you were there? Yeah, kind of. It's kind of a weird place, and I'm over it now. But in this administration, it's not only a point of pride, but it's actually reason to believe that the kids themselves must be innocent of all the charges, whatever they might be, against them. I went there, so it can't be the case that kids that go there now are anything less than innocent. It's a weird thing, and I wouldn't want it widely known. And who knows? He may not be all that happy about it being publicized either, but they'll drag him out for the, I guess when they have the kids over for hamburgers or whatever they eat there these days, they'll drag him out and say, look, you too can move more or less directly from an elite Catholic prep school to a famous graduate program and then on to the White House if you, I don't know, say grow up, become a partner, and donate enough money to the Republican Party. It's a worldview. It's an outlook. Anyway, Greg Dworkin is here. I'm sure that other things were happening in the world, and he may even know about some of them, but you probably watched the Covington Catholic situation too a little bit, right, Greg?
I did. I tried not to overly weigh in on it. There's lots of different point of views, all of which suggest the one major thing to me is where the hell were the grown-ups?
Yep.
And of course, the second question was, do you like beer?
Yeah, I guess that's it was really remarkable. That's so many different offerings of video, some of which were almost 2 hours long, and you cannot make out an adult figure anywhere.
Right. I mean,
in
any
the
of
video.
us who have had kids who have been on these field trips knows
Where
that
were
there's
they?
always chaperones.
Yes.
There's always chaperones. Like, where are they?
I really have no idea. There were a couple of times where I thought I spotted people who might possibly be chaperones, but their behavior was not distinguishable in any way from the kids, so I was a little worried about that.
Right. Anyway, that'll sort itself out. The other major thing, which is kind of in theme with your bio, the White House lawyer, is that there is a relatively well-funded and powerful network to defend these sorts of things. I just saw a TV commercial on it on cable news this morning.
Oh.
Stand up for people who are being hassled, something along those. I didn't catch the whole thing. I was doing something else. But it was, here we are picking on these kids. We have to, it sounded like the exact same agency that had done the Brett Kavanaugh support stuff.
Well, it may well have been. You're right.
And it sounded like, the same theme.
Yeah.
It's just they changed the name.
Definitely true.
It's like, this is weird. I mean, why are these kids getting a PR firm paying for this sort of thing? Where does the money come from? What is going on here? Yeah,
it was kind of strange. I understood the idea of maybe, it was a little over the top, I thought, but hiring a crisis management from the family of the kid who was mainly targeted. I guess if you're an elite local family and you've got the money to send your kids to school like that, fine. But yeah, it's between that and I think he was on, I forget which of the morning talk shows he was on with Savannah Guthrie.
It was supposed to be, that was NBC.
NBC,
with
whatever
Savannah,
she is.
Whichever one she does.
Yeah,
but the whole thing is just so weird because people forget that actually Brett Kavanaugh wasn't all that popular after that PR blitz.
Yeah,
he got on the court because the Republicans had the vote, not because the public was persuaded and they elected him. That's actually not what happened.
True, and there's no opportunity to. It was weird once he got on the court. I mean, I guess it was a fait accompli, as they say, and so we stopped talking about it so much, and that probably was the best thing for his personal recovery. There's no appointment or there's no vote coming up on Covington Catholic. I'd be interested to see whether this fades in the same way. I guess they go back to Kentucky.
Well, it won't fade
we
in the
forget
same
about
way because people want to bring it up. I mean, here's a story in
We're doing
National
it now.
Review. Covington Catholic is the terrible sequel to the Kavanaugh case. David French writes all about how, liberal hate is responsible for all of this. First, people looked at Kavanaugh and said, this could be my husband. Now people look at the smirking kid and say, oh, this could be my kid. So obviously public opinion is going to rally around these things just like they did for Kavanaugh. Well, of course, the problem with that is that that's not what happened. But,
no, it didn't happen the first time. And no, that couldn't be, my husband or my kids. And if it was, I'd be furious. And that's what's wrong with you, David.
But there is a paid and organized theme to try to push that narrative. And that's really the only point I'm trying to make.
Okay. Well, then you're done with that point.
I'm done. I'm done with the whole story.
Okay.
Why is it a 4 or
keep
5 day story when the shutdown is going on and so many other things have happened?
That's a lot of people. There's a lot of theories
because
circulating.
people hired folks to make it such.
Yeah, and then there's now a theory that we're making it such because it's supposed to be a distraction from the shutdown. I don't know how far I go along with that, but it's certainly worth pointing out. There's worse things going on. True, always the case.
Always the case. So let's look at some polling about some real life issues.
All right.
The shutdown and Russia drive Trump to all-time high disapproval. Nearly 6 in 10 voters, or 57%, disapprove of the president's job performance in the Politico Morning Consult poll, which is a Trump-friendly poll. So in that same poll, it was interesting. Only 31% of Americans feel confident that Russia isn't blackmailing the president.
Well, not many.
Not many. CBS out with their poll. 71% say the wall is not worth a shutdown. 71%, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And it may be the majority of Republicans who feel otherwise. But again, this is one of the situations where Republicans are on one side and the entire rest of the country, including independents, are on the other side. 60% say shutdown is a serious problem. They say Speaker Pelosi is a better negotiator than Trump, 47 to 35. And probably most significant single number, Trump approval rating is at a new low of 36%.
Mm-hmm. Not good.
The Democrats approve of Pelosi. Republicans are not thrilled with how McConnell is handling his job. 43% approve, 40% disapprove, 17% don't know among Republicans looking at McConnell's job rating. And he's on the wrong side of immigration. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Donald Trump is handling the issue of immigration? Approve 38%, disapprove 60%, and among independents, it's 35 to 62. Among Democrats, it's 7 to 91. Among Republicans, it's 80 to 19. That means 19% of Republicans disapprove of what Trump is doing. And for Trump to have an 80% score among Republicans is actually a pretty terrible number.
Yeah, you're supposed to, have the overwhelming support. 80 is, sometimes overwhelming support, but not on the question of, is he okay? Is he competent to the task?
Right. And then Emerson poll is out today. 55% oppose Trump's proposal to end the government shutdown by exchanging temporary protection for Dreamers for the wall funding. And then if instead of temporary status for Dreamers, they get full citizenship.
Yes.
Opposition increases to 66%. So Democrats hate Trump's proposal, whether the Dreamers are temporary or permanent. You're not getting the wall, Donald. And then if you add permanent status for Dreamers, then you lose Republicans.
All right. So there's really just no way of building toward this thing.
Right. And that's why you're not going to – why was it temporary and not permanent? Temporary alone was enough for Ann Coulter to scream amnesty.
Right.
And if you make it permanent, you have no Republicans whatsoever. So that's not going to be a proposal, just, pointing this out.
Okay.
How will the shutdown end? That's really the intriguing question everybody's been asking for about a month now. And whereas Mitch McConnell said that he refuses to do show votes in the Senate because no show votes in the Senate, right? I mean, that was pretty funny. So McConnell said, I'm not going to bring anything to the floor that doesn't have the approval of the Democrats, Trump, and us. In other words, I'm only going to bring stuff that's going to pass. Which is a very odd way of looking at what the Senate's job is.
Yes. Typically,
right?
you have a good
he
idea.
essentially adopted the Hastert rule, but included Democrats in it.
Yeah, sort of.
And so he took that position for a month. We all knew that wasn't going to last. So now, as of Thursday, there's going to be two votes. The first one's going to be a pure, give Trump his money vote, with all the extra poison pills that Stephen Miller wrote into it about getting rid of people who show up asking for asylum. Mm-hmm. And the second one's going to be on the clean bills that the Democrats have passed one by one, with leaving out, I guess, the part about the wall for a negotiation later. So these are temporary CRs. And the current wisdom is that Trump's wall will fail because it needs 60 votes, and you're not getting that from Democrats. It just ain't going to happen. And again, the conventional wisdom is that the open up the government will fail because Trump doesn't want it. Although people as diverse as Matt Grossman, who's a political scientist, and Sarah Binder, who, as you know, is a Senate Brookings expert, all think that there's a small possibility that by tomorrow, having voted for Trump's wall and having it fail, Republicans might have a little leeway to vote for the open the government one because they could tell the constituents, I voted for the wall. Get off my case. Yeah. I had to do this for you.
Possible.
So it's possible. And even if they both fail, at least it sets up a situation where McConnell is now starting to bring bills to the floor.
Yes,
on
at
this
least
issue, which hadn't happened until tomorrow.
Yeah. It's a weird situation that he caved in that way. I mean, it's better that they vote on things from time to time, but I guess
Well, once you open that door, then you can start like actually negotiating a little bit.
I guess so. Although, I think he's only bringing the vote because I think Trump said, do it. And
I think it's the other way around. Trump doesn't have any plans. It's really interesting. Somebody observed, and I wish I could credit it because I think it's exactly right. The Trump White House has become a one theme, one idea White House. Build a wall. Has no other ideas, no other governance, no other concept of what to do. It's that, and we're going to sink or swim on this. So Trump doesn't have any ideas about how to get it done. It's really a simplistic 6-year-old, I want this, and I'm going to hold my breath until you give it to me. And I think it's McConnell, is what I'm trying to say, that comes up with these ideas, not Trump. McConnell can say to the president, Mr. President, we're going to do this, and we're going to give you the vote you want. And then when it fails, then he has slightly more leeway to say to him, his constituents, and his senators, we did that. Now we have to do something else.
Yeah.
I don't think that's Trump's idea. I think that's McConnell's idea.
I don't think it's Trump's idea to say, well, bring a vote on the wall, and then when it fails, you do this other thing. I think Trump is just like, bring a vote on the wall. It'll win.
That's how you convince him. So. That's how McConnell says, you're right, Mr. President. That's exactly what we're going to do.
You bet.
And then in his back pocket, he says, okay, and then when it fails, then I have this other thing. I'm not telling you about that yet.
Yeah, he may not know about that. Right. He's just banking on it winning. And, that may be how he gets away with it. And although then the president will later rail against McConnell the minute he does the second vote. What did you do that for? You should just bring that vote for the wall again and again and again until people change their minds. Well, geez, that's not the way it works, Mr. President. Well, it should be. Just do it anyway. And we'll see whether McConnell gives in to him on that and just votes on the wall over and over.
Well, again, it's interesting. Every analyst, large and small, good and bad, from smart and insightful to dumb and trying to incite. I mean, all of them say Trump's backed in a corner.
Yes.
And so what do? You're supposed to give him a face-saving out. The trouble is Trump won't take any of that stuff.
Right. He does not know.
So you have to do it for him. And then what happens after that remains to be seen because you can't really trust him to negotiate. He changes his mind every 10 seconds. And essentially, he's held his own government hostage because now he can't do anything else until this is resolved. And so what do you do with that? That's why it's so frustrating and we're all stuck. We know what the right thing is to do. Both sides are moderate style commentators are frustrated because they keep saying things like, well, it's clear that Trump is losing the public. Everybody hates this. Nobody wants the shutdown. So it's up to Democrats to fix it.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do. We fix things.
I mean, both sides, right? So the grown-ups in the room say, well, fine. But this is one of those situations where Nancy Pelosi has said, look, you're not getting your snack until you clean up your room. And you can try to get away with it all you want to. You got to clean up your room.
Yeah. Well.
And there's nothing to negotiate on. Clean up your room. Then we'll talk. And, they're having trouble with this because nobody's ever talked about that before. Nobody's ever talked to him in this way before. Nobody's ever said no.
Yeah.
He's flipping out. He really doesn't know what to do. And unfortunately, they're probably right. It probably is going to be up to Democrats to craft some sort of face-saving way out, but one that doesn't give him his damn wall, which he's not getting.
Well, we'll see what they come up with. And I know they're also working furiously towards figuring out what they're going to do on the White House side about the State of the Union address. And currently the story is that they're just going to show up on the 29th and say, where's my audience?
Where's everybody?
Yeah.
So I heard that, one variation of this is he said he's going to Congress to give a State of the Union. He'll just give it on the Senate side.
Yes, it's a thing you can do. It won't be a joint session, but most people
watching
won't know
here's the
that.
process question.
Oh, okay.
I mean, how do you allow that? Do you have to take a vote on it? To invite
Senate.
him? Do you need 60 votes? Can the Democrats filibuster that?
I don't know whether. I mean, it's a good question. Whether I don't. It's never been asked in a.
It's never been asked. Never
filibuster. I mean, you could invite the president to address the Senate. There's very little reason to do that. And I suppose it's possible. I don't know whether it's ever been asked, in which case you can get a parliamentarian to say, it's a non-debatable motion to invite the president. Oh, okay, then no filibuster. It's possible.
Right. Well, then that means that the Democrats don't show up. Right.
Yes.
So you're just talking to the Republicans in the Senate, let alone join.
Maybe. It's a good question. A lot of people have said that, in that case, we wouldn't want that to happen. On the other hand, I say there's much more limited seating in the Senate chamber than in the House chamber. I say Democrats should show up and occupy half the seats with non-applauders so that it's really quiet in there.
Okay. Well, again, that may be part of the discussion. Of course, the way to fix all of that is to fix this before the State of the Union, right? So we have another week.
We'll try that.
We could try that, but those all of that stuff has been floated, and part of it is bluster. Trump says, "I'm going whether they want me or not." I have this letter from Nancy Pelosi that says I was invited. Yeah, but the doors are locked, the lights are off, and nobody's there.
Yeah.
So you can go talk in that conference room over there, way on the other side of the building if you want to.
Maybe.
That's the only thing we're giving you. And the whole idea is to deprive him of an audience. So he's going to try to set it up so he has some Republicans who are going to stand up and give him a standing ovation.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the debate about where to go and what to do. And that's why he's not just going to do it from the Oval Office. He's already tried that. It bombed.
Yeah,
and then he gave the Saturday speech. I forget where that was from. It wasn't the Oval Office, but that bombed too.
Yeah.
And he needs that audience. So he's going to probably just skip it all and just give his State of the Union to a rally in Florida.
Yeah, maybe. I understand that there are Republican heads of legislative chambers in the states that have said, come give it at the House of, the lower house of the Michigan legislature or the North Carolina or whatever. I don't know whether he's interested in doing any of those things. It's going to be really interesting to see him walking around the building rattling doorknobs trying to get in somewhere.
Diminish yourself, Mr. President. We don't have to do it for you.
Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption, though it's still aimed at saying thank you to all of you who are supporters of the show. We've made a lot of progress. When we first started this campaign, fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners were donating to help keep us on the air. And now that's down to about 1 in 15. But we've got a long way to go. Remember, it won't take much. Our average monthly donation is currently about $7, for which you're getting 2 hours of great news and entertainment 5 days a week. What's that, 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal. But as a wage, well, I think Democrats would be against that. But if we all put our 70 cents together, or even half of us, that'd really be something. And my kids could go to college. Now, that's not all on you. But remember, patreon.com, Patreon.com, is there to make it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box. And you'll be right there where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your continuing support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Greg Dworkin still with us, and let's wrap things up here.
Wrapping it up because I have to.
I'm not saying you have to go. But.
I can't stay and interrupt David for another hour like I'd like to. But there was an interesting series of tweets here I'm going to read to you in the sequence I saw them. Maggie Haberman says, having lost DACA as a bargaining chip thanks to SCOTUS. Remember, Trump was offering DACA temporary for 3 years, and SCOTUS said, well, it's going to hang around anyway because we're not going to touch it.
Oh.
So having lost DACA as a bargaining chip thanks to SCOTUS, White House is now considering offering DACA recipients green cards.
Okay.
And Jonathan Allen says, status check, White House is still negotiating with Republicans, not Democrats, on ending the shutdown. A lot of Republicans hate that idea, by the way. Even if they can unify Republicans, a unified one-party bloc is the right strategy to stop action, not to force it. Trump can't end his political pain without a lot of Democratic votes. So if he's offering things that Republicans think may or may not be acceptable without talking to Democrats, you can't turn around and say, okay, Democrats, take it or leave it, because Democrats will say, leave it. What do you got?
Yeah.
Right? So Mark Murray says, look, the central truth here, White House still negotiating with Republicans, not Democrats. If you want a wall, what are you willing to give up besides what the courts have already ruled on to get it? Especially when you already rejected $25 billion for DACA last year. Trump has nothing to give. He can't give it. It's so central for him to have his wall and decrease immigration and do Fortress America and make America white again. It is the core of what he stands for, what this White House stands for, which is why Stephen Miller still works there.
Right.
How is he supposed to give that up?
He's just supposed to do it, but he doesn't know how, and there's
He doesn't
no
know
way for
how,
him to really...
and that's why he's negotiating with Republicans to see what level of still being a white nationalist can we be without losing our base, even though he's losing the base over his shutdown and over tariffs and decreasing confidence in the economy. But how can we keep our base by still being white nationalists? And that's a discussion not to have with Democrats, because they're going to say, stop being a white nationalist.
Yeah.
And he's going to say, no, you're not getting it. I can't do that.
Oh.
That's my core. So he's negotiating with Republicans only, and that's why this is going nowhere. And the only way to get around that is to get around Trump and negotiate with McConnell. And that's why you have to do things like put bills on the floor that will open the government up and allow senators to vote on it. And this Thursday second option may fail, but you got to keep putting that there, because eventually it's going to succeed, because the senators really hate being in this position. They hate voting on controversial things. At least McConnell is giving them an out by allowing them to vote on both things at once, and they can claim to their constituents that I voted for whichever one you like, since they're opposite bills here. I voted for both. You know that trick. People do that all the time.
Yeah.
I voted for sending it to the floor, but I voted against it on the floor where it passed because I knew it was going to have votes. So don't yell at me, because clearly one of these two votes is the one you wanted. Just remind me which one, and I will point it out.
Yeah, pick one.
Pick one. I mean, people do that all the time. And that's okay for Republicans, but you can't use that trick with Democrats, because they want something completely different than what you are selling. So that is the central truth here. And until the Republicans get their act together, we're shut down. And blaming Democrats for the fact that Republicans don't have their act together, I think is just wrong analysis.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably true. It's interesting. As you were saying it, I began thinking about the various times during the filibuster reform fights where people said, well, we need the filibuster around because that forces the Senate to come to bipartisan compromise on everything in order to get votes from both sides. And I think we're watching that fall apart too. And all it takes is a president that won't budge. Normally we don't have that, but now we do. And maybe the age of the usefulness of the filibuster for forcing bipartisan compromise among adult leaders of the Senate who don't cede the leadership of this co-equal branch to the executive, well, those are from days gone by. We don't have that anymore, and so maybe it's just not of interest after all.
Right. You know, Harry Reid had a shorter summary of that, which was in a Mitch McConnell profile in the New York Times Magazine over the weekend. Mm-hmm. He said, McConnell broke the Senate.
Oh, well, yeah. That's...
He ruined it.
Yeah, and it wasn't because he turned the Senate into the House. It was because he turned the Senate into the White House.
Yeah, exactly right. Anyway, I'll leave you with those thoughts. Now, if you want to do any policy, there's one other set of things, and yet a different poll. This is the KFF, Kaiser Family Foundation tracking poll. Continued support for the government doing more to help provide health insurance for more Americans, including 56%. Who favor a national Medicare for all plan, which isn't nearly as strong as it sounds, because KFF has been tracking public opinion on the idea of a national health plan for many years. There's a modest increase in support relative to other years, but consistent with previous polling, the public's attitudes can shift after hearing common arguments both in favor and against a proposal. So people, first of all, don't vote on policy, and secondly, don't really have strong policy opinions in their head other than I like this, I don't like this. They don't even know what the policies are. If you tell them about it, they vote yes. If you tell them the bad things about it, they vote no. Overall net favorability can get as high as plus 45 and drop as low as minus 44, depending upon how you explain national Medicare for all.
Okay.
For example...
Wow. Yes.
If you say that, do you believe in guaranteeing health insurance as a right, 45 plus, yes or no, if you look at the difference, plus 45 for guarantee health insurance as a right. Everybody agrees with that.
All right.
But if you tell them it would lead to delays for people seeking care, minus 44.
Oh.
If you tell people it threatens the current Medicare program, it's minus 28. If you say it requires more Americans to pay more taxes, your plus 45 turns into a minus 23. And if you tell people it eliminates private health insurance companies, then you go from plus 45 to minus 21. It depends upon how you phrase the question. A lot of people don't understand that if we did national Medicare for all, their current insurance would disappear.
Yes, although a lot of people who do understand that say, hooray.
Yes,
I can't wait.
But, it's not 100%.
No.
You don't get a majority if you tell people they're going to take away your current health insurance. If you made it voluntary, it would be wildly popular. If you make it mandatory, not so much. If you make it mandatory, it perhaps works on paper. If you make it voluntary, does it pay for itself? This is the starting point of this discussion, not the end point. But I'm just pointing out there's a lot of work that still needs to be done for all of the various and sundry 2020 candidates who are going to be running on this. Yeah. There's still a lot of explaining about how this works that hasn't been done yet. And just as people, without mentioning names, who weren't the nominee, haven't experienced the barrage of ads against it.
Yes.
People who want to push this plan have to understand the effect of the Harry and Louise type ads against it, which hasn't happened yet. And the public is not fixed on the idea of this is a good idea. They are very persuadable one way or the other. And so be prepared for that. And that means you need better arguments. You need arguments to counter the negative stuff.
Yeah.
That's not done yet. And I don't think anybody's really explained how it all, how it all works. How would it affect you? Which is a much more important question than how does it get paid for?
Yes, likely true. And, the campaign for it will be extraordinarily difficult, if for no other reason than you're talking about, on one side, a policy pitch for why it would be a good idea, and the other side, frankly, would be largely unbound from any reality if they wanted to be. They certainly could try and base it in reality, but there'd be nothing to prevent them from simply saying death panels again and have people panic about that.
So you have to be prepared for that.
That doesn't mean
Let me also
don't take
throw
it on,
but
yes.
I'm going to throw in the dirty word that begins with I.
Okay, there are several. Let's hear it.
Not impeachment.
No. Oh, all right. This is more imaginative. Great. All right. What is
incremental?
It? Oh, incrementalism.
This month also finds larger majorities of the public favor more incremental changes to the healthcare system, such as a Medicare buy-in plan for adults 50 to 64, Medicaid buy-in plans. The percent and Medicare and Medicaid are quite different. They have quite different health structures. They have quite different payment plans, drug coverage. Medicaid is cheaper, but you get less. Public attitudes on proposals to expand Medicare and Medicaid. Percent who favor each of the following. Allowing people between the ages of 50 and 64, sometimes the polls, this one is 50, I've seen it as 55 as proposal. Allowing people between the ages of 50 and 64 to buy health insurance through Medicare. 77% of the public like that idea. Allowing people who don't get health insurance at work to buy health insurance through their state Medicaid program instead of purchasing a private plan. 75% like that. Creating a national government-administered health plan similar to Medicare, open to anybody, but would allow people to keep the coverage they have. In other words, make Medicare buy-in optional, 74%. Okay. And then having a national health plan, sometimes called Medicare for All, in which all Americans would get their insurance from a single government plan, 56%. Until you tell them some of the downside, in which case it drops below 50%, sometimes significantly.
What about if we tell them you get candy?
And a pony, but you could say that. Or how about
we should just
I know that. It's a problem, but only I can fix it. That seems to work for some people.
Yeah, that's true. I have seen that win in the past. I hadn't thought about that as an option. Having just watched at least the better part of, I don't know whether it was the better part, a larger part of the Brexit docudrama on HBO I mentioned the other day. Intriguing to watch. so many parallels between the way the Brexit referendum was handled and campaigned on and paid for, between that and the Trump campaign here in the United States. It was fascinating to watch the reactionary conservative position against Brexit being expressed as we should drop out of the European Union and use that money, which they thought was a real thing, the money that they thought they were really sending to Brussels in order to remain a part of Europe, fictional. But we should use that money for our National Health Service. That was the conservative position. We got to shake things up and get out of Europe so we can bolster our national health care plan. That was really interesting. But we don't have that here.
Well, so, let's. Jonathan,
we're going to build
Cohen,
a wall instead. So
one of the Jonathan Cohen, who writes about healthcare, had a piece in Huffington Post, which he summarized, which is a good summary of the whole argument here. No survey can predict with certainty how a debate over any specific healthcare plan would actually play out, especially with such a debate at least 2 years away. But polls can reveal a lot about voter hopes and fears. Democrats will not succeed at passing legislation until they're ready for both. And I think that's good advice. And I'll leave that with you.
Yes,
is Joan on today?
Yes, I hope so. You'll have to actually leave that with me so I can share it with everybody else. Yes. And
I will.
And then you're allowed to leave if you need to. But Joan is due probably in the 10 o'clock hour. So
maybe she has more insights on the shutdown showdown.
I am certain. And maybe some additional ones on, and we'll build on those observations made here as well. So she's listening in, I'm sure. Great. Okay. Well, thank you for your help today. It was a pleasure to get away, at least briefly, from the Covington Catholic, the all-consuming story of the week.
Remember, it's all-consuming because they want it to be.
Right. And I mean,
but it's their version they want it to be. Again, right. It's very frustrating to hear it because, firstly, that's not what happened. Yeah. And secondly, it's amazing that they have this much money to spend on stuff like this.
Yes, and not on other things, or claiming that we're out of money for various other topics. Or I'm sure they have Republican candidates out there who lost this time saying, where was that money?
I'm just going to generically refer to the whole thing as the I Like Beer PR campaign. Whenever it comes up again that some other issue comes up and they decide to blow it up and make an issue out of it.
Somebody else likes beer. All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Take care. Talk to you on tomorrow.
Okay, will do. We'll see you then. I'm sure the stories will be largely the same, but we'll have new takes on them. That's what we do.
Exactly. Well, tomorr's the vote, so that'll be fun.
Okay. So we'll all say, here comes the vote. All right. Take care, Greg. See you tomorrow. All right. Let's see where to head from here. I just happened to see a few things flying across the screen as we were chatting, some of which are of more importance, some of less. Which one is this, do you think? Did I put away a story like this yesterday? I know I did see this reported yesterday. The Hill has a story, although their version of the story this morning is in like video clip form, so I don't really want to go there. I would just like to find the written story on it. I know it's around here somewhere, but the basics, I might not have put that one away because it was too dumb. But now, once you get on the air, dumb things become particularly attractive. I'm not certain why that is. The Hill, though, asking the question in their video podcast, does it matter that President Trump's social media pages alter photos of him? And the answer is yes, but also perhaps slightly no. But you might be interested in what are they doing. On the whole, I would say, yeah, it matters that they're altering photos of him because basically that's, a manipulation of the factual record, and particularly with a guy like Donald Trump, any further manipulation of the factual record in his favor, or in any way, really, is something you don't want to trust this guy with. Now, I said that there was also a sense in which this is not important. And that is what they're doing, apparently, according to the reports I read yesterday, is they are photoshopping pictures of the president, which are already in circulation in the public domain, but the ones that they display on their social media that they claim it's their right to control, they are essentially airbrushing in order to make him look less rotund, less heavy, skinnier, not so fat. How many ways can we say this? The Hill's tweet on the subject has a side-by-side comparison of the before and after, or in this case, I guess since we read from left to right in English, after and before. And it just looks like basically they find ways to expand the background of the photo over parts of Trump himself, or at least his suit, so that the contours of what appears, the contours of his body that pop out from the background make it look like he's just a little slimmer. They take a little off of the shoulders. They take a little out of the cinching of his jacket. They narrow and raise up the drooping crotch of his pants. It's really pretty disturbing, actually. Oh, and Joan has seen it, so she's sent me the link to a write-up on it. Thanks, Joan. Gizmodo has written the story on it, and for whatever reason, I guess I opted not to put that away in pocket yesterday. President Trump posts altered photos to Facebook and Instagram to make him look thinner. They get right to the point in Gizmodo. Matt Novak writing this piece up. Maybe we can get a technical view of exactly what they're doing since it's Gizmodo. Or they might just be saying, the president's so fat, he has to Photoshop his pictures, which is okay as a story goes. I might have gotten that from Wonkette, but let's trust Gizmodo here for just a second. Not that I don't trust Wonkette. They'd be funnier. President Donald Trump's social media accounts are filled with vile racism, idiotic xenophobia, and inaccurate statistics. And now we can add another category to the list: fake photos. In other words, of course, fake news. In recent months, Trump's official Facebook and Instagram accounts have published photos of the president that have been manipulated to make him look thinner. I guess one question would be, is this happening at his orders? And is that an important angle on the story, that we know that or not know that? Anyway, maybe they discuss that later on. If it only happened once, the story continues, you might be able to chalk it up as an accident. No, you couldn't. But Gizmodo has discovered at least 3 different retouched photos on President Trump's social media pages that have been published since October of 2018. Because there's not a whole lot of opportunity to use the background to make the president look thinner, and also everybody kind of knows he's a big guy, and it's a perhaps a hopeless proposition. But okay. The image below, published on the official Donald J. Trump Facebook page on January 17th and on his Instagram account over the weekend, has been altered to make the president look more fit, which doesn't do anything to make him more fit. So, there's still every chance that he dies of a massive thrombosis any minute, but at least the photographic record looks better. Let's see. And I guess they used it in some sort of, photo meme on their Facebook page that says he's an awesome guy. And like I said, they expand little bits of neutral background where they can to overlay photo real estate that was previously occupied by his clothing to make him look a little smaller. The photo looks pretty normal at first glance, but once you compare it to the original, which is available on the White House's Flickr page, you can see what was changed. The original photo was taken by a White House photographer on June 14th, so you know that the original hasn't been altered by anyone in the so-called fake news media to make Trump look heavier. But that will be the accusation anyway. That they'll just say someone made him look heavier and then hacked the White House photographer's website or Flickr site and uploaded the new fatter looking picture. And maybe it was some 400-pound guy who did it in order to help normalize his own weight problem. I'm sure that's the theory. Anyway, by the way, the White House photographers are terrible. So you shouldn't have any problem believing that they take and publish photos that might even exaggerate the president's weight unintentionally. I think unintentionally. And that a good photographer would have better sense, both in taking that photo, framing the, composition of the photo so that it doesn't look terrible, and then when you find inevitably, well, there's nothing you can do for this guy, or I just got a bad shot here, you would make better selections and not publish the worst of the worst. But that's not happening in this White House because, like everybody, the White House photographers are largely incompetent too. It sounds silly to even have to say that you know that they haven't been altered by someone in the fake news media. It sounds silly to have to even say that, but many Trump supporters believe that the media is involved in a coordinated conspiracy against him. Allegations about this conspiracy often, by the way, have anti-Semitic overtones, in case you're interested in following the links there, and you can find out more about that. As you can see in the comparison above, Trump's right shoulder has been slimmed down, and his face is looking thinner. Yeah, it actually is, and it actually kind of looks like, I guess they've lightened his complexion a little bit in changing it and photoshopping it. They had to get rid of some of the shadowing in order to make that work. It really actually kind of looks like they cut and pasted a different Donald Trump head onto this photo, but I don't think that's what they did. But again, they used the background. You can see they used the background to shave the jowls off of the right side of his face and use it to erase and round some of the shoulders. He's pointing in the picture, so his giant shoulder pads in his suit are jutting his artificial shoulders out another 6 inches, and they slim down his waving coat, and they raise up the crotch of his pants. Altogether, not a totally successful effort. They didn't shorten his tie. I'll note that as well. Although it looks actually like they might have lowered his. Yeah, they did. They lowered his. It looks to me like his belt line has been lowered. They took out the shadowing in his shirt and then lengthened his torso so that more shirt was showing, so that he looks thinner. That's the optical illusion he was hoping to achieve with his ties, but kind of in reverse. Anyway, so he's also gotten a haircut, a digital one anyway, and in one of the strangest alterations, Trump's fingers have been made slightly longer. Oh yes, look at that. How interesting. So I guess anywhere there's skin tone, they've been screwing around with things. Yeah, you can definitely see the difference in this. So somebody's hard at work at doing this. And I guess if this is on the official pages, where are they putting this? Are these on White House controlled pages? Then, somebody on the official payroll getting paid to do this stuff, or are they putting it on campaign sites? I don't know. Donald Trump, an unindicted co-conspirator, the article continues, whose own lawyer admits that the president was trying to secure a real estate deal in Russia as late as November of 2016. That was a random toss in there. Good for you. Has been somewhat sensitive about the size of his hands ever since journalist Graydon Carter described Trump as a short-fingered vulgarian. Yeah, that was, we were originally reminded of that by Armando's reading of Spy magazine from the 80s. And there's the mention. Carter was writing for the now-defunct Spy magazine in the 1980s when he made the observation, and the insult has reportedly bothered Trump for decades, which is great. Carter claims that the president has even sent photos of his hands to Carter with the fingers circled in gold Sharpie. Wow, gold Sharpie. To this day, I receive the occasional envelope from Trump, Carter wrote in 2015 before Trump won the presidency. There's always a photo of him, generally a tear sheet from a magazine. On all of them, he has circled his hand in gold Sharpie in a valiant effort to highlight the length of his fingers. I almost feel sorry for the poor fellow because, to me, the fingers still look abnormally stubby. Just keep your eye on the finger to see how it grows for Trump's social media pages. They have, in describing their interactive feature here in Gizmodo, morphing one picture into another. I did think he got a bit of a haircut in this picture as well, but they didn't do anything about the weird right angle swoops that he keeps over his ears. But they did get rid of, I guess, the too heavy overgrowth and overcomb in the Photoshop effort. Anyway, the photo was presumably altered with something like Facetune, I didn't even know that was a thing, or Photoshop, but we can only speculate about the exact tool that was used, though we really don't need to. President Trump's 2020 re-election campaign manager Brad Parscale did not respond to Gizmodo's multiple requests for comment over the weekend. Parscale has gotten credit for helping Trump seize power in the U.S., it's a good way of putting it, through his successful use of Facebook ads, but he's never talked about digitally altering the way that the president looks. Facetune is a wildly popular app with, I guess, Instagram celebrities and is used to make enhancement to photos. The app can smooth out skin, make someone thinner, or even make people appear more muscular. The app was first released in 2013, but its popularity really skyrocketed with the release of Facetune 2, you see, in November of 2016. Facetune has consistently topped the charts ever since. But it's not just that one photo that was altered and posted to social media. There's also this graphic published on Trump's official Facebook page, ladies and gentlemen, on October 3rd, 2018, when the stock market was doing really well. Remember that? If you think Trump's face looks a little weird, you're not alone. And it really does. It looks actually like he maybe have been previously bleeding badly from a facelift or something like that. So that's included here for your viewing pleasure. The original photo is from then candidate Trump's trip to Scotland in June of 2016, taken by Jeff J. Mitchell. You can see the unedited picture in Getty Images, and it's displayed below. Trump's wearing a white Make America Great Again hat, can be seen pointing at something in the distance. His disapproval rating growing, I'm sure. One thing is clear from looking at the president's social media accounts: he really loves pointing. There's no point to that, but it was mentioned nonetheless. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. And yeah, it's true. The article goes on to discuss yet more photos that have been altered and the bits and pieces of them that have been altered. And generally speaking, I think we get the hang of this. Although it's a very informative and very thorough article, that's sure enough. And I recommend that you spend some time perhaps reviewing the rest of it. They do get their digs in as well, but it's a pretty remarkable thing. I thought it might be unimportant at first, but somehow it just adds to the narrative of this guy not only lies about everything, but is just so he's willing to put people on the job of altering the factual record about him, about something as inconsequential ultimately as the size of his fingers and how much he weighs or how fat he looks. I mean, he's just that kind of person, and I guess we ought to know that, and it's really all there is to it. Okay, other items that have garnered attention on my trip through morning Twitter. Gabriel Sherman gets another mention today for a piece written last night about Rudy Giuliani being a terrible lawyer, essentially. I mean, he's just epically horrible, and no one can understand how he keeps screwing these things up. And I mean, it's led to conspiracy theories about him secretly being a Trump resistor. But Gabriel Sherman has a piece here in Vanity Fair, the headline of which I guess is the important part, and we'll get through that relatively quickly. Trump is screaming. He's so mad at Rudy. Giuliani's fate is uncertain after botched interviews. As Giuliani's unforced errors pile up, former West Wing officials and 2016 campaign veterans are privately debating what's gone wrong with Rudy. And the answer is he's Rudy. Let's give you the lead paragraph here. Every time Rudy Giuliani opens his mouth in front of a reporter, something bad seems to happen. That's it. No, Donald Trump's beleaguered lawyer has, over the past few weeks, given one disastrous interview after another. There's some links here if you want to remind yourself. The latest fiasco came Monday when Giuliani participated in a rambling Q&A with the New Yorker's Isaac Chotiner. I have no idea how that's pronounced, but maybe. After telling Chotiner that he only had a moment before he took a shower. What? Giuliani unspooled a series of bizarre responses. That one was bizarre. The first one, actually. At one point in the conversation, even admitting he worried that his legacy would be that he lied for Trump. Well, it will be, but, I mean, I guess just to really put a finer point on this, was this the same interview in which he said he was basically sure of that whatever the hell we were talking about, that the Trump and White House current position on XYZ, and I think it was the BuzzFeed article, right? They were sure he was sure that BuzzFeed's article claiming that Trump had directed Michael Cohen to lie for him in his testimony to Congress was fake news because he had reviewed all the tapes and nothing like that was ever mentioned. And then the reporters say, I'm sorry, why do you reviewed all the what now? The tapes? What tapes? You've been listening. He's got tapes? And Giuliani says, I really shouldn't have said tapes. No, I didn't. No, there's no tapes. I didn't mean that. I didn't say that. Forget I said it. Which, I mean, it's like a comedy, except, of course, it is in fact a tragedy about the United States. It's not a very long article, and let's see. I mean, is there more that's important to know about? Trump is furious with Giuliani's recent botched press appearances. 2 Republicans briefed on the president's thinking told me. What makes the most recent interviews so frustrating to Trump world is that on Friday, the president secured his biggest victory yet, really, when Robert Mueller's spokesman, issued the rare public denial of BuzzFeed's explosive report alleging, well, you know what he alleged. Before Rudy stepped in it, Mueller had basically called BuzzFeed fake news, a Republican close to the White House said. Not how I read it, but that's how they would see it. According to sources, a debate is playing out inside the West Wing over Giuliani's future. Trump is being encouraged by several people, including Jared and Ivanka, because they're great judges of who really does good work for the president, to dump Giuliani before it's too late, while outside advisors Corey Lewandowski and David Bossie are lobbying Trump to keep him. It's amazing. Trump is screaming. He's so mad at Rudy. One of the sources said, no, he's not pissed. He just wants it clarified. Yeah. Giuliani told CNN's Dana Bash on Tuesday when asked about the president's response to the interviews. The White House had not responded to a request for comment by press time. As Giuliani's unforced errors piled up, former West Wing officials and 2016 campaign vets are privately debating what's gone wrong with Rudy. Why, they ask, is he making statements that so obviously damage his client? A former White House official speculated that maybe Giuliani has lost his mind. You guys see who's president? No? But there are other more charitable ways of interpreting Giuliani's interviews. As I've previously reported, the Trump-Giuliani relationship hasn't been good for weeks. Giuliani has said privately that he hates the job. It's not a job. You're not getting paid. And that Mueller's final report will be horrific for Trump. Facing these challenges and pressures, it's understandable he'd make mistakes, the thinking goes. Everyone who works for Trump screws up because there's no way to please the guy. That's more like it, says an outside Trump advisor. But frustrating as the job may be, Giuliani may also be addicted to it. Friends say the former New York mayor was embittered after being out of the limelight for years following his failed 2008 presidential campaign. He's been exhilarated by the press attention that comes with being Trump's lawyer. Sources said Giuliani often books his own interviews and frequently texts with television news anchors. There's a school of thought that it's better to be famous and ridiculed than ignored, a Giuliani friend told me. That's the Trump school. But the media environment has become vastly more complicated than it was a decade ago, the last time Giuliani was on the national stage, and he has struggled to adapt. This has been a trial by fire for him, the president said. He can't just say whatever he wants because he's being fact-checked on Twitter. Every time he does anything, he gets caught. Well, that's definitely a difference between what happened, in the old days and what's going on now. I did see some speculation also out there on Twitter earlier today that perhaps it would be best if Rudy were forbidden, let's say, from booking interviews in the evening, because people are beginning to suspect that he's been doing evening interviews after drinking at dinner or shortly thereafter, and that maybe he's sharper earlier in the day. I don't see much evidence that he's sharper at any point, but it's a theory, and I guess you could go with it. Wow. Okay. Let's see. One other short item that I guess I could update you with prior to hearing from Joan. I wondered yesterday out loud what had happened with the Los Angeles teachers strike, and the answer is now in. And I grabbed the highly convenient report on it from The Hill, though that's not necessarily my favorite source for a news story like this, but the headline is all we're after. Los Angeles teachers end strike after approving contract deal. So that's good news. Congratulations to the teachers for getting what they needed out of this, and congratulations to the students who will be the beneficiaries of the teachers' actions here. And it's good to see that under a system of government where, normal people are in charge, a strike action can be answered with an appropriate counteroffer and a settlement can be reached. They've settled that strike in a week or less, and the federal government is still closed because petulant moron we have for president. So just wanted to update you on that situation. The question answers itself. Let's see. Also, recently out of the news, but now back in, a North Carolina judge has ruled against certifying the results in the North Carolina 9th District congressional race. Mark Harris, the Republican candidate there, who cheated in order to come out ahead, apparently making a last-minute bid to plead with the judges to certify him, despite the fact that the State Board of Elections refuses to do so, and the judges are joining and refusing to do so. So we're at a stalemate on that question, and I guess it will likely be the House Rules Committee, not the Rules Committee, but where do they send the House Administration Committee, which will likely come up with a recommendation about what to do about that. And I'll be curious to see whether they demand a new election. I really don't know why we came down on that as the conventional wisdom. I guess, once again, just trying to be fair and reasonable about the whole thing, which isn't necessarily the outcome. I don't know why it's always our responsibility to do that. And also, you had a choice between two candidates. One cheated and disqualified himself, and it was a pretty close election. Frankly, installing the Democrat at this point isn't out of the question, as far as I'm concerned, though I suppose they think that it's entirely likely that a rematch as between these two candidates would come out in favor of the Democrats, since it was so close the first time. Cheating was detected the first time. Perhaps they think they could avoid or in some way at least reduce the amount of cheating that the Republican might do in this second election. Or they might have a replacement candidate. I don't really know. I'm not certain where this goes from here, and it's all unclear. The only thing we can tell you is that even the judges down in North Carolina weren't willing to bend over backwards to install, or do what they can to install, the Republican. Probably because they were aware of the fact that that simply wouldn't work. They could certify whatever they want, and then the Democratic House would simply reject the certification, and they'd be back to square one. So why bother looking ridiculous in the first place, I guess. Okay. So lots of smaller developments on side stories that are always ongoing dramas. There are more, of course. And let's see. Here's one or two that I think Joan may have quite a bit to add on, including one of her own stories. So I'm pretty sure it will come up about the ongoing negotiations over the government closure, and she'll update us on that. Another brief addition we can add to the pile here. AP reporting that China has granted Ivanka Trump 5 new trademarks in the middle of ongoing, of course, trade talks between the United States and China. And, if that isn't textbook corruption, I don't know what is. And since I do know what is, you can be sure that it is, in fact, textbook corruption right here. It's amazing what she's asked for trademarks in, by the way. I'm not kidding when I tell you that she has applied for and gotten a trademark for, I guess, Trump brand childcare centers, which is a uniquely poor idea, honestly, as well as, I understand it, charitable fundraising, brokerage, and an art valuation service. It's really interesting. I mean, the range of trademarks that she's gotten. The last round of trademarks was kind of unusual, too. This one, all right, so let's see. 4 of them, including childcare centers, sunglasses, and wedding dresses, were approved on Sunday. The 5th one, covering brokerage, charitable fundraising, and art valuation services. What a combination. Approved on January 6th, according to online trademark office records. Very weird. If no one objects, it says they'll be finalized after 90 days. No idea whether anybody can object from outside of China. And, of course, inside of China, I imagine it's probably a pretty bad idea to object. But, hey, what do I know? It's just interesting that, I guess Ivanka seems to have this idea that there is a vast market in China to be exploited, no doubt. But she has this odd idea. One, that it's proper for her to be doing this, I guess. 2, her companies are shut down because of conflict of interest here in the United States, but I guess that means that they're really not. And we ought to just look at that the way we look at any Trump comment. She says they're shut down, therefore the reality is that they are not shut down, and here we see the reality in action. But I'm curious about how she comes to these conclusions about what to trademark. And I guess it's any whim she might ever have. She figures I might as well trademark it and trademark it in China at that, because I don't know. Some of these things may come to fruition. Some of them may not. But I might as well get started on trademarking anything I've ever given any thought to marketing in China. Understandable. I understand why you would do that. I guess what I don't understand is what's guiding her choice making on what trademarks to apply for. And in most cases, it just seems like, well, Ivanka, what do you like? What are the things that you enjoy having or shopping for or talking about? And then let's just make you a maven in marketing those things in China. And anything is possible in China. They have no idea really, essentially, who you are. They get some idea you're a famous person and you're the daughter of the American president, and that's it. And that you consider yourself a style icon. And you are in a unique position to sort of define things as being quintessentially American as a result of that. So what would you like to sell to the Chinese people with your name on it? Well, let's see. I like sunglasses. I like to wear sunglasses when I go outside in the sun. They're fun. They protect my eyes. They're nice. They look fashionable. Okay, good. Wedding dresses. Those are very elegant and stuff like that. Yeah, okay. Wedding dresses, sunglasses, good. Well, in this case, this round, I guess. I work at the White House now. Yeah. And I do policy, like important policy. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I like to do is, because I'm a woman, my job is like I cover the woman stuff. So like working moms who want to become successful, like they need childcare very often. Yeah. So childcare. Right, like, so what do you mean? Like finding a nanny service? No, maybe, but I was thinking the kind of childcare that regular people use, because this is supposed to be about like caring for regular people. Okay, so what do you mean? Like childcare centers? Yes. Ivanka Trump branded childcare centers. What's the value proposition? I don't know. What's the value proposition of Ivanka Trump sunglasses? Well, they could be of a certain style that expresses your individuality. But I copy all my designs from other people. Point. That's true. Point well taken. Are you just going to copy somebody else's childcare center model and put your name on it? Are you going to paint the toilets gold? What is it you're thinking of doing? Oh, we're going to paint the changing tables gold. Is that what we do? The diaper pails, the diaper genies. We have gold diaper genies here at Ivanka Trump childcare centers. Nail salons, jacuzzis. What are you going to? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The other one, brokerage, charitable fundraising, and art valuation, is just also uniquely weird. Like, again, it's just like, I don't know, I like money, so who has money? Brokerage things, they deal with money all the time. Charitable fundraising, it's the sort of thing people, look at as worthy. Never mind that I'm banned from serving on the boards of any charitable foundations at least in New York State at the moment, because I have an established record of cheating and embezzling from charitable fundraising foundations, and art valuation services, which again, I guess is like, I like to go to art galleries and talk about how valuable the paintings are and maybe buy them and put them in my collection. Or I've tried to sell things, works of art before, or maybe more to the point, I'm getting ready to sell off the various art pieces that my stupid dad has bought over the years when he dies, and I want to make as much money as possible. And one of the things I can do to guarantee being able to do that would be own an art valuation service, so that I can, and this one I'll name something else, and then I'll have them come in and value all of the artwork that I own very highly, and then I'll sell it for that price. And it will be an independent valuation, because this one won't be branded with my name. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Or maybe it's just a matter of, I'm going to sell these artworks in China, so it doesn't matter if I have a conflict of interest. They don't care about these things. It's just a weird combination of things that she's chosen to trademark. And that's without even getting to the point, that most people, I think, are concerned about with this stuff, which is, it's outrageously corrupt to be involved in trade negotiations with China and having China at the same time bribing the president by granting his daughter exclusive license to make a mint in China, marketing crap that she knows nothing about. But, the big point, of course, is the payoff. Not that she doesn't know very much about what she may or may not try to market in China later on. Okay, so that's an interesting one. Let's see. Also, perhaps well worth mentioning. Don't know much about this one, but I thought it was another good quick hit that we might touch on. Joshua Holland tweeted this one out yesterday with respect, once again, to the stupid Covington Catholic story, but just wanting to point out that there was a formula involved in how the White House and others were responding to the situation. He tweeted out, what conservatives are doing with the MAGA punks is known as DARVO. Have any of you ever heard of this? This is new to me. DARVO being an acronym for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. And it does pretty well describe what seems to be going on here. It's a common tactic, he says, among sexual offenders. That's perhaps the provenance of it among the Trumpsters. And it's become very common on the right in the age of Trump, because so many people on the right in the age of Trump are sexual offenders or aspire to become sexual offenders. There's a whole definition of it linked here as part of a abstract from a PhD at the University of, well, it's housed at University of Oregon. But very interesting and perhaps well worth your time to review. I would suggest we do it perhaps offline later on, but I guess it's a real thing, and there's real empirical research about how frequently it's used and by whom in the real world. So if you had suspicions that there was something formulaic about the Trump and alt-right world's response to Covington Catholic, you hit it on the nose, and you didn't even know it. Or maybe you did, and if you did, congratulations to you. Joan McCarter is here with us. There's things that you know, and congratulations to you on knowing those things. What are they? What the hell's going on? Joan, what's happening in this country?
Good morning, Kagro.
Good morning.
I know very little.
It's hard to know anything at this point. But yeah, it's I don't even know where to start, I guess. But I know I'll bring up one thing that I saw you discuss over at Daily Kos just the other day. Of course, you're covering the negotiations, or such as they are, to try and reopen the government.
Between Jared Kushner and Stephen Miller?
Yeah, right. So it's not only, as Greg mentioned, Republican senators negotiating with McConnell and among themselves, but when they talk to the White House, they're not even really talking to the president. They're talking to his underlings, which is frequently the case in real negotiations too, but usually with an eye toward bringing votes in from the other side. And it's not happening. I guess the latest round of proposals they put forth, they tried just to label as, well, this is our compromise offer. And as I understand it, it was actually considerably worse than the status quo.
It's considerably worse than the status quo. It dramatically undermines current asylum laws. It's you have to apply for asylum if you're a Central American minor outside of the country while you're still in Central America, which is extremely dangerous. It puts caps on the number of asylum grants that can be made overall. It's really, really bad stuff. So it was interesting to me that they would lard it up with so much. Originally, what I thought was happening with this was McConnell was going to have one bill, and he was going to have the reopening government and the border wall funding. That would be kind of it, except the sweetener he wanted to have for Democrats to make this really difficult to vote against was going to be emergency funding.
Yeah, okay.
More disaster relief for the Gulf states, for California, for the fires, for Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be how he was going to really stick it to the Democrats, which was perfectly in keeping with how McConnell does stuff. Then they dropped this 1,000-page bill that had all of these Stephen Miller-inspired changes to the immigration system that made it pure poison. You know, even Joe Manchin isn't going to need to vote for this thing because it changes immigration law so fundamentally, which had to come from the White House, had to come from Stephen Miller.
And it's curious that they were able to put together 1,000 pages so quickly.
Yes. Oh, I think Miller has his little pages of legislation to do horrible things that he carries around with him everywhere to insert into any situation.
I guess so. I mean, and it's we talked about they had made an earlier proposal about insisting that people apply for asylum in third countries, or second countries, I guess, because ordinarily that's something you do here, and that's because we have the people and personnel to process those requests, and nobody else does.
And because of the basic principle that if you are seeking asylum, you need to come to a safe place.
Right. I mean,
be in a safe place.
That's what the seeking is about.
To make your case.
It's not just like, I would like asylum.
And asylum, that's what that's about. So.
Yeah. Well, all right. So, I mean, I assume that there's no answer to how in the world would you apply for asylum in Ecuador? Like, you just...
These centers they say that they're going to have not been created yet. So what I haven't looked into is whether they provide funding in the bill to create these Central American centers for asylum seekers.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, I would guess not. But even if they did, it would say, well, that's okay. I mean, so you give money. I don't want that. So I'm against it. But all right, well, we'll look into Alex a little bit more about how much other garbage he might have tried to pile in there and what other garbage might be coming next. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is here with us. We'll continue exploring, I guess, the fake negotiations for reopening the government. But again, I had to thank her during the break for sending that Gizmodo article. I never would have checked, and I probably should have been the first thing on my mind, that as long as they're altering the photos, did they make his fingers bigger? And they did. That's amazing. I'm really saddened by that. But
here we are.
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah. It's a sad situation, but we're stuck in it. And I guess
we may as well laugh.
I guess so. Really, honestly, what else are you going to do about it? I don't know. All right, what other topics are occupying your
let's get back to the government shutdown and
real.
Where we're at on immigration. Of course, as Greg pointed out earlier, there's bad DACA stuff in the legislation too, but it's been made moot by the Supreme Court for now, until fall anyway.
Is he mad about that? I'm wondering. I was wondering if the president, would have raged about that, like, you took away my fake thing, or the way I wanted things to go on offering DACA extensions, and then you just said I didn't need to. I don't know whether he's taking his anger on it.
Tweeted rage about it. No. He's probably too busy raging at Giuliani right now.
That appears to be the case. Part. Yeah, and he'd be right in doing that.
Yes, he would. But anyway, what's offered in DACA is very bad for the DACA kids. For one thing, it only applies to 700,000, not the 1.8 million who are eligible. And it ends after 3 years. I mean, there's no path to citizenship. It's not at all what Democrats have been asking for. It's not even as much as has been on the table in the past. So there really is absolutely nothing in the negotiated deal, the compromise, that Democrats could possibly want. But what's interesting to me, and I'm not sure how this happened unless it's Trump so badly wanting his State of the Union address that McConnell split the bills. I mean, we could say it was Schumer being master negotiator and somehow
you want to try that?
Forcing the second clean continuing resolution vote, but
well, I mean, I really don't know why he would do it.
Anyway, here's the chance for Republicans, and what's more, on this continuing resolution, it's not completely clean because it has a sweetener for Republicans. It has disaster relief funding.
Okay, so it's a sweetener
for all
for
those
everybody,
Gulf state senators, Texas, Mississippi, Florida, North Carolina.
So, okay.
So there is the potential for this to draw enough Republicans to make cloture. I'm not holding my breath because McConnell is a good counter.
Yeah.
But it could happen. The flip side of that is only funding through February 8th. So, it could be McConnell saying, okay, you can vote for this. It's only for a few weeks. Trump gets his State of the Union address because government is
really
reopened.
Almost nothing else. I mean, February 8th is coming up.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks. So it's not very long. But at the same time, in 2 weeks after all of the bad press, after how bad this has been, is the Senate going to go along with shutting down government again?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose in the interim, in the 2 weeks, one, Trump would get, presumably, his State of the Union address, and two, they could cut checks for back pay to everybody and then shut them down again, perhaps also with no end in sight, but at least they'd be able to say, all right, well, the people who we were getting nervous about not being able to be able to pay their expenses and put food on the table, who are government servants, those about whom we actually care would be taken care of, and though we may do this to them all over again, the immediate pressure would be relieved. We're no longer the bad guys starving the Coast Guard.
Right.
We're going to do it again, but see, they're not starving right now, so we're okay.
Right. I'd feel a lot better about this had it been what had come over from the House, full funding for all of the bills that there's bipartisan agreement on that's either been made through committee or passed in both houses. That's 6 out of the 7 agencies right now. And keep Homeland Security, on this 2-week continuing resolution. But that would be too much to ask. So.
Yes, I guess so. I mean, that had wide agreement, but I guess I don't know. I guess they really do enjoy shutting down the government, and it's led to a lot of growth in theories about this once again being part of someone in the White House says long-term plans for wrecking and maybe rebuilding in their own image, maybe not rebuilding at all, the federal government. I don't know that that's really on Trump's mind, but it doesn't really matter as long as he's willing to endorse it. Who comes up with it?
But we know he loves chaos.
Yeah. And he really thinks, I mean, he was asking for and threatening government shutdowns before he won. During the campaign, he was saying, I'm going to shut down the government. I'm campaigning on that.
He wanted this to happen. He loves this.
Never heard that one before. Campaigning and saying, probably going to shut down the government if you elect me.
Well, he knew his audience.
I guess so. These are the ones that believe that nothing bad comes of it. They bought into Newt Gingrich's original thinking on that. I don't know whether they don't remember how badly it went for him or what, but...
Funny you should bring up Newt Gingrich. I sort of delved into the history of government shutdowns just a little bit this morning. Because yesterday, Senator Mark Warner from Virginia, who represents an awful lot of federal government employees, introduced legislation to end government shutdowns.
Yeah,
and you're going to love the acronym if you haven't already seen it.
I heard about it, but I can't remember what it actually stands for, but yes. All right. It's what?
It's the Stop Stupidity Bill. Stupidity being shutdowns, transferring unnecessary pain, and inflicting damage in the coming years. Which is actually stupidity. There's a C in there that he kind of,
although maybe that's an inside joke.
Anyway.
I don't know.
What it would do is revert to practice prior to 1980, which is basically have an automatic continuing resolution. If a budget hasn't been passed, if appropriations haven't been passed, agencies just continue on with their current levels of funding.
Yeah.
But what he would do is exempt legislative and executive branches from getting that money to try to keep them, at the table.
I see.
Not a bad idea. So it turns out this is what happened regularly up until 1980. This is just what they did. But at that point, apparently, President Carter was having a difficult time with his Congress, which in every year of his presidency thus far had failed to produce a budget on time. So he went to his attorney general and said, we got to do something about this. What can we do? Benjamin Civiletti was at that time attorney general, about this ongoing problem with budgets not being done. So he dug around and he found the 1870 Anti-Deficiency Act, which, along with the constitutional power of the purse given to Congress, said you can't do that. The executive can't function if Congress hasn't paid for it to.
Okay.
So
that was the invention of
Civiletti and Carter.
Yeah, well.
At the time, Carter was saying, look, we've got to make Congress somehow more answerable, and we've got to force it to do what it's supposed to do, which is give us the money we need to run the government. If they don't do that, then that government has to shut down, and they're going to get blamed for it.
Yeah, so make some affirmative decisions.
Despite the fact that he had succeeded Nixon, he didn't foresee that there would be Newt Gingrich's and Donald Trump's and the Freedom Caucus who would say, hey, what a great hostage this is for us.
Yes, that's true. We weren't clear on exactly how far they would go with it. And, as Machiavellian as Nixon was, I don't think there was anything that he did that indicated that he was anti-government.
Yeah.
So, and he was applying the laws to him. That's true. But, he was pretty pro. He was a big government Republican, to be sure. And up to and including using the IRS to punish his political enemies, and signing environmental legislation of all sorts. I guess that's it. That we just really hadn't given rise to the anti-government Republican yet.
Not yet, no.
All right. Well, that was something of a mistake, I suppose. Interesting, though. Something of a
mistake. So anyway, here we are. And
good research, Joan.
Of course, with Mitch McConnell in control of the Senate, Warner's legislation isn't going to go anywhere. But it's something certainly to look at for 2020.
Yeah, I guess so.
To wrap into the larger bunch of governmental reforms that the House has already come up with under Nancy Pelosi, including an important one. I don't know if we talked about it, bringing back the Gephardt rule.
I don't think so. Did we?
Which applies to the debt ceiling.
Oh,
so
yes. I think that
trying to take the debt ceiling hostage off the table by saying once the House passes a budget, that automatically raises basically the debt ceiling, takes the power away from the Senate to block it.
Yes,
it's interesting what you can do with rules in the House of Representatives.
Well, anywhere, of course, but anywhere you have to be willing to do it. It is interesting, and it's kind of fascinating, this research that you did about the origins of the shutdown, too. I'm surprised that, the interim between the Budget Act and 1980, I'm surprised the Budget Act didn't have, didn't contemplate government closure for failure to comply with it.
Yeah.
That's weird. I guess they really just didn't, even though they were in the middle of not reaching budgets, they just didn't think that was something that could go on forever. And I guess in framing the Budget Act, you'd say, well, we have the Budget Act now. Of course we're going to do budgets.
Yeah.
But they immediately failed. That's amazing. The super committee of its day. Oh, well, that's odd. Okay, and the idea of taking away the hostage of debt ceiling seems like a wise choice, even though you would think that Republicans would not do that to their own president. I guess he loves shutting the government down. So I suppose any hostage he can get and is in danger. So
Yes.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I was having nightmares about the debt ceiling.
Oh, sorry to hear that. It's well warranted, to be sure.
Because that's a really huge one. As bad as this government shutdown is, as horrible as it is for the economy, a debt ceiling is kind of a global problem.
Yeah, and
it's kind of threatening everything if it's not taken care of. So,
and Trump would not care in the least, I'm sure.
No, he would not.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare. Okay. Let's see. Anything else
on
the horizon?
Speaking of Thursdays, I want to get back to Thursday's votes a little bit because I think there's going to be a lot more pressure than McConnell is thinking on Republicans to do this, to open it up. And one of those things I saw this morning was the Business Roundtable has called for an end to the shutdown, talking about how it's harming the economy and all American workers, federal and private sector. I don't know how much Republicans pay attention to the Business Roundtable, but they're going to pay more attention to the Business Roundtable than they are any of the government employee unions. So It might help.
Surely.
But what also happens is that we've got to hammer every Republican senator with phone calls.
Yes. Several of you do have Republican senators, and it's time for you to do that.
They've got to feel this pressure.
Yeah, I guess that's the only possible way out of this. Unbelievable. Okay.
So there we're at.
Okay.
I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I guess I really don't know how to predict it, and I ordinarily would assume that Mitch McConnell has a pretty good idea, but I can't tell what he wants to get out of this exactly. I don't know whether he wants to help the president or not here. I cannot tell.
No, it's really hard to know when helping the president is, well, what is helping the president?
I don't know.
Instance? Keeping government shut down?
That's the weird thing. Ordinarily, oh no, he wants to come to a conclusion and settle this problem, and it may be that he wants not to. So yeah, I don't know how to predict something like this.
Do we know what Trump wants? I don't think Trump knows what Trump wants.
May not. I don't know. I'm sure he's ready to declare either position a victory, so it might actually leave things entirely up to McConnell. It might finally be what McConnell wants. And
we know what Trump wants in the very short term. He wants to give his big TV speech.
Yes.
And look presidential standing in the House of Representatives.
Right.
Beyond that, I don't think even the White House staff knows what he wants.
I don't know. Maybe it shouldn't.
I mean, he wants his wall.
Yes, clearly.
Does he care how he gets it?
No, I guess not. He doesn't even care what it's made of. So I guess there's no reason to care how he gets it either.
There's actually a story in Bloomberg this morning about how his closest advisors have a competing sense of what the president would be willing to accept as part of the deal with Democrats. They don't know what he wants. They call it his elusive terms on border deal. Because he changes his mind every 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah, I will do this. No, I won't. You have a deal. No, you don't.
Go back to December 19th when we had the vote in the Senate to reopen government, because Trump had said, sure, I'll sign that one more time. And then, whoops, nope.
Yeah.
A Christmas shutdown is exactly what we need.
Right. Oh, what I wanted all along. So thanks for giving me what I want, which I didn't want this morning, but now I do.
Yeah.
Ann Coulter said I did, and that's that.
Right.
So
thank you, Ann Coulter.
Yes. It's been a pleasure. Well, yeah, all right. So we'll have to, we're just going to have to sit here and watch and see. And it's a real guessing game. And see what comes out, after which Trump will claim that's exactly what it was that he wanted, and we'll have to see how terse Mitch McConnell is in his press conference afterward to decide whether he meant for this to happen or not.
Yeah.
That'll be our only signal. Very odd. Man, I don't know.
He's going into this confident that there aren't going to be the votes to reopen government for 2 weeks. Apparently. I don't know.
That there are the votes?
There are not.
Not. Okay.
That it won't meet cloture. Both of the votes tomorrow are cloture votes.
So if that's what we imagine he wants, is it because he needs to come back with, you have to give up, Mr. President, or he wants to come back with something that a CR all the way through the end of the fiscal year for 6 departments like the Democrats in the House proposed? I can't imagine he wants to agree to that just because.
Oh, no, what the Democrats had was regular funding. Just the only thing on a CR would be Homeland Security.
Yeah. The other departments would be funded all the way through the
regular
end of the fiscal
funding.
Year.
Yeah, the agreed to budget levels in the House and the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
So it would just be Homeland Security on a CR.
Yeah. Does he want that? If he does he secretly want it or not?
Does McConnell want that? Probably.
Yeah. Okay. It's hard to tell with this guy. But all right. So I guess we'll see what happens if he's right, and he's usually right about his own counts. Then we watch everything fail tomorrow and then wait for the press conference either afterwards or a day or so later when a new proposal comes around. Do they leave for the weekend without making it? Has he got it in his pocket? We assume he's planned for this.
I don't know if they leave for the weekend.
Yeah, so the other question is, does McConnell's backup plan have more leverage with another weekend of disastrous press, or does he look like the grown-up in the room if he says, all right, well, here's what we're going to do next, and lets people chew on it for the weekend and the Sunday shows? I don't know. There's no predicting this. Could guess either way.
It's possible that he's okay with this 2 weeks of funding as long as it's not 67 votes, because 67 votes would allow Nancy Pelosi to say, see?
Yeah, you could have.
You can override a veto.
Yeah. That's true. That's a good point, too. So he needs something that gets him more than 60 and less than 67. So between 60 and 66 votes. Can't be too good.
And 2 weeks of breathing space on the shutdown. He might be saying,
pay the people.
However
and
many
start
of you,
over.
what's the count now? 47? 53?
Yes, I think that's the breakdown now.
So he could be saying 7 of you can vote for this.
Mm-hmm.
And only 7. I don't know.
What a weird way out, even and to do it with mostly Democratic votes. He doesn't. I don't know whether he cares or not, but I can't.
Yeah, I know.
How weird is it that you can't even tell what the leadership of government wants with respect to
making the government work?
Right. Yeah. There you have
Functioning.
I don't even know if they actually want to do that. And so I can't tell you. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they just said, well, just pay the people and then start over. Reset.
Yeah. We know how bad this is for the Cory Gardners and Susan Collins of the world who have to run again in next year.
Yes.
But is it bad enough? Does McConnell see that it's bad enough for them in those states? Does he care? Because in the Trump states, this is the polls are getting worse and worse and worse, but they still have primary challenges to think about. So,
yeah, well, that's where his eye is, I guess. And I suppose if you think you can game that out, what works best, not only to defend vulnerable seats, but I assume he's still interested in not increasing the number of crazy Trump adherents that he has to deal with. He'd much rather have Susan Collins back, because why not? She just does whatever he says anyway.
But also the crazy Trumpsters that he has to deal with in his own home state, because he's also up for re-election in 2020.
Yes, that's true.
And he got off to a very rocky start with Trump and with the Trumpsters.
Right. That's true.
So he's going to want to avoid any dissension in the ranks at primary time and, for the entirety of the cycle. So...
Wow. All right. So big question mark for tomorrow. So
he's looking at his own seat. He's looking at the majority. He's looking at his continued power. He doesn't want to piss off Trump. He doesn't want to piss off the Trumpsters. He's got a caucus clamoring to get this resolved because lots of them are running in 2020. Mm-hmm. He does want to keep his majority.
Yes.
No one deserves this kind of pressure more than him, by the way.
True, right. And, by the way, a good portion of the kids at Covington Catholic will be eligible to vote in the next election as well. Just thought I'd bring that up. All of our tomahawk chopping friends will be probably registering in the next year or so, and not all of them. Some of them will still be too young, and they'll vote next time around. But I guess
they're all going to be ending up going to law school so they can become judges someday.
Yeah, right. Or White House counsel, as it turns out. So, okay. Well, all right. We can't predict what will happen tomorrow, but we do know how procedurally it happens, and at least it gives us the opportunity to try and game out. Well, here are the two options. If it fails, this could happen. If it passes, this will happen. That's the only part we know.
Procedurally, this is kind of important too. I don't know how much of a clue it is for us. The wall funding bill goes first. The immigration bill goes first.
Okay.
The CR goes second.
Yes.
So Republicans can say, I voted for this. I voted for the wall. I voted with Trump. I voted for his immigration stuff. And I also voted for government workers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anticipating that it fails, they still say, I voted for it.
I have no idea what they're going to do.
All right. Well, they don't either, so I don't see why.
I imagine they don't.
Yeah. All right. They get to roll the dice, and we get to watch. It's a rare moment of drama on C-SPAN 2.
Yes. It does help to be able to talk it out a little bit with you, even though we don't come to any conclusions.
Yeah, but at least we know we don't.
Talk about all of the possibilities.
Right. Yeah. All right. So though we can't predict it, we at least have some idea of the universe in which we end up, pass or fail. And
as much as we can, because where Trump is concerned, Lord only knows.
Yeah.
He wants his wall and he wants his speech.
Yeah, two extremely important things. And he wants his fingers to be longer. This much
to be longer.
This much he has control over, at least as far as the photo record goes. Can they Photoshop him into the House of Representatives if he gives his speech somewhere else?
That would be the way to do it.
Is that not possible? Maybe they could just do that. And then he just insists that did happen. You put an applause track in there. They got plenty.
You know what's crazy? They hadn't even officially accepted Pelosi's invitation before all this started. They hadn't accepted her invitation.
Right.
And have the State of the Union.
Yeah, he's not big on RSVPing, I don't think, for anything else. I guess if he figures I can crash pediatric AIDS fundraisers, I can crash anything. So, yeah, I guess not. And I really will be curious to see what happens. He keeps insisting, I'm coming on the 29th. And, what do you do? Suppose he walks to the door and I guess you just make sure you're out of session.
Well, they should be having a vote to reopen government.
Yes. Right. They're not supposed to be busy with the State of the Union at that point. They should be scheduling votes. You're right.
Yeah.
And then they could do that. But then I suppose he shows up at the door and he tells the doorkeeper, announce me. I'm here. Do they have to chase him out with the mace? What do we do? What if he just walks up there?
The Sergeant at Arms and the Capitol Police versus the Secret Service.
Yeah, it's a big standoff. That would make for exciting. All the drama would be on C-SPAN 1 then, after all. So everyone has to have a shot at this. Otherwise, they have to do the State of the Union elsewhere, and only C-SPAN 3 can cover it. So
right.
So C-SPAN will settle this for us. Okay. Very good. I'll put it in their hands.
C-SPAN for the rescue.
Excellent. We'll get covered anyway. And where will people do their responses? Who even knows? How many will there be? We'll be back. Maybe they'll come back next week and we'll try and game that one out. Thanks, Joan.
We'll see what we can figure out.
Yeah, well, we'll enjoy tweeting at you during live watching the votes on Thursday. Thanks for coming by.
Bye.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, stay tuned, of course, for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next with Justice Putnam. Let's see, there's some interesting stuff we didn't get to today. Justice Alito penned a bizarre love letter to the Christian right. Lindsey Graham is mocked for his plans to settle old scores and abuse his power by investigating Hillary Clinton, and much, much more coming up next.